Hi, you're watching Reddit Confessions. What you're about to hear isn't just a story. It's a collapse that started with one laugh and ended in a way no one could have predicted. It began in a restaurant I didn't choose, at a table I didn't want to sit at, on a night that felt wrong before it even began. She was already there when I arrived, waving at me like nothing was broken, like we hadn't been sleeping on opposite edges of the bed for months. Her lipstick matched the wine she ordered before I sat down. She looked good, relaxed. That was the first red flag. The waiter came. She ordered for both of us, something she never did. "He'll have the trout," she smiled. I hate trout, but I said nothing, because I'd already started to suspect that my silence was the only thing about me she still noticed. Dinner was hollow. Her phone buzzed 3 times. She smiled at it every time but never turned the screen my way. I asked who it was. She said Jill. She always says Jill, even when I know it's not Jill. But I didn't plan to spy. It just happened. She excused herself, phone in hand, to take a call near the hallway to the restrooms. I waited. 10 minutes. Maybe more. Eventually, I got up to find her. I didn't expect to hear my own name. Not like this. "He just sits there, like some background noise," she said, actually laughing. "I swear, I forget he's even in the room. It's like being married to a ghost who still pays the rent." The person on the other end chuckled too. A man's voice. Deep, confident. I froze. Not because I was heartbroken, but because the tone in her voice wasn't one of misery. It was boredom. That hurt more than hate ever could. I didn't say a word. Didn't burst in. I turned around and walked out the back door of that restaurant like I was never even there. Like the ghost she described. And that might have been the end of the story, if not for what happened next. Because when she came home, I was gone. And so was something else. But I'll get to that. The sky was bruised with clouds by the time I made it back to the house. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't need to see the walls we painted together or the couch where we used to fall asleep during movie nights. I just stood in the hallway, listening to the silence I had once mistaken for peace. That night, it sounded like proof. Proof that I no longer existed in her world, except maybe as a bill payer and name on her tax forms. I didn't pack a bag. That would have implied I knew where I was going. Instead, I grabbed my wallet, my car keys, and the emergency stash of cash I kept in the kitchen drawer, just behind the box of old birthday candles. She never looked there. She hated clutter. I left my phone on the counter, unlocked. If she wanted answers, she could find them in the complete absence of any message from me. I didn't write a note. I didn't slam a door. I just disappeared. Quietly, like a shadow leaving a room no one knew it was in. I drove through town with no destination. At one point, I considered calling someone. Anyone. But who? My brother, who told me years ago that Genevieve gave him a bad feeling. My mother, who'd warned me that divorce is failure. A friend? I had let most of them fade away during the marriage, always choosing her needs over my own. By the time the gas light blinked on, I was 2 towns over. I pulled into a motel that smelled like old carpet and cigarettes. Paid in cash. No ID. No name. When I shut the door behind me, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wallpaper until sunrise. But here's the thing. I didn't cry. I thought I would. I thought I'd collapse, punch something, fall apart like in the movies. But all I felt was a strange, heavy clarity. Like the part of me that had been screaming for years had finally been heard. Not by her. By me. The next morning, I bought a burner phone and logged into our shared cloud storage. Something I don't think she even remembered we had. And that's where I found the folder. The one she didn't name. And inside were pictures. Pictures that would flip everything upside down. And one of them was taken in our bedroom, while I was supposed to be at work. My hands shook as I clicked through each file. The folder had no name. Just a timestamp that made no sense until I realized it matched the day she claimed she'd spent the afternoon with her sister. The first photo was blurry, probably taken by accident, but the second one made my stomach twist. It was her, Genevieve, lying in our bed, wearing the dress she told me she had returned weeks ago, and smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. Her eyes weren't looking at the camera. They were locked onto someone else just outside the frame. The third photo revealed him. A man I'd never seen before. Shirtless. Familiar with the space. Holding a glass of wine I knew we didn't own. And her body language, God. It was like watching a stranger wear my wife's skin. There were more. Videos too. Not explicit in a way that would get flagged, but intimate enough to crush me. Conversations whispered. Jokes shared in our kitchen. Him sitting in my chair, eating takeout from the place we ordered from every Friday. He even fed our dog who wagged his tail like this man had been around for weeks, maybe months. At one point, in a short clip, Genevieve's voice came through, quiet but clear. He won't even notice. Emery doesn't pay attention to anything. She laughed after saying it. Not nervously, casually, like I was some old pair of shoes she kept out of guilt. I closed the laptop and stared at the motel ceiling again. But this time the silence felt like it was pressing down on my chest. I wasn't just mourning a marriage. I was mourning the version of myself who still believed in it. All those times I tried to make her breakfast, left notes in her purse, planned weekends she canceled last minute. I thought I was trying too hard. But it turns out I was trying alone. Something cracked in me that morning. Not in a fiery, I'll get revenge kind of way. More like a silent unraveling. I drove back into town, not to confront her, but to leave one final fingerprint behind before disappearing for good. I snuck into the house while she was still at work, walked past every photo frame, every piece of furniture we chose together, and placed a single flash drive on the kitchen table. No password, no note, just the truth neatly packaged in a plastic shell. I left the spare house key next to it, locked the door behind me, and this time I didn't look back. But apparently she did. Because 3 days later, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. All it said was, "We need to talk. Please. I didn't know you saw everything." And that's when the games really began. I stared at that message for nearly an hour. "We need to talk. Please. I didn't know you saw everything." It didn't have her name on it, but I knew it was her. She never used punctuation in texts, except for that one period after please. That was her tell, her version of sincerity. But what stood out wasn't the apology. It was the part that said she didn't know. That meant she had never intended to come clean, never planned to confess. If I hadn't found that folder, she would have just kept going, sneaking around with him, laughing behind my back, waiting for the right moment to leave. I powered off the burner phone without replying. Let her wonder. But what I didn't expect came the next morning. I woke up to a new email, not from her, but from the man in the videos. His name was Tyler. He used a corporate domain. First, I thought it was spam, but the subject line hit me in the gut. "This isn't what I signed up for." He wrote 3 paragraphs, all cold and calculated, like a man filing a report instead of reaching out to the husband of the woman he'd been secretly seeing. He said Genevieve had told him we were separated, that I'd emotionally checked out years ago, that she was staying with me only until the finances were sorted. He claimed he felt deceived and said he was ending things. No remorse, no apology, just a clean break and a digital trail to cover himself. But it wasn't over, because 2 days later, I got a message from her sister. Hannah and I were never close, but she always treated me with a kind of distant respect. Her text was short. "Jen's been crying for days. Whatever you did, it broke her. Please talk to her. Or at least let her explain." That was the part that made me laugh. Explain? Explain what? That I was nothing more than a prop in my own home? That she paraded a stranger through our kitchen and called me invisible? Still, part of me wanted to hear it. Not because I thought she'd redeem herself, but because I needed to know what kind of story she'd tell once she realized the truth had already spoken for her. So I set the trap. I told Hannah to have Genevieve meet me at the cafe near our old apartment, neutral ground. Public. Controlled. She agreed within minutes. She thought it was a chance to fix things. But I had one condition. She had to bring her phone. And she couldn't delete anything. What she didn't know was that I had a second flash drive. And this time I planned to hit play in front of her. She arrived 10 minutes late, like always. Same coat, same perfume. But her face was new. Pale, uncertain, mascara slightly smudged like she'd rehearsed crying but didn't know when to cue it. She spotted me at the far table, near the window, and hesitated before walking over. I didn't stand. I didn't smile. I just looked at her the way you look at something that used to be yours but now feels foreign. Like a song you once loved but now can't hear without wincing. She sat across from me without a word. Her fingers immediately found the edge of her coffee cup, spinning it slowly, like she was waiting for the right dramatic moment to begin. "I don't even know where to start," she said finally. "Start with the truth," I replied. "All of it." She looked at me, then down, then back at me again. "I made a mistake. A huge one. But I didn't mean for it to happen like this." "It wasn't." I cut her off. "It wasn't what? Serious? Planned? You said I meant nothing to you, Genevieve. That doesn't sound like an accident." Her eyes flinched at the sound of her name. That's when I pulled out the second flash drive. She stared at it like it was radioactive. Her hand stopped spinning the cup. "I backed it up," I said flatly. "Before I left. Everything in that folder you didn't bother to hide." Her mouth opened, then closed. Silence stretched between us like a wire pulled tight. I could see her mind racing, damage control, excuses, selective memory. But none of it came fast enough. "I was lonely," she finally whispered. "You weren't present. You stopped trying. You let us fade." I actually smiled. Not out of joy, out of disbelief. "So you brought someone else into our home, into our bed, because I wasn't entertaining enough?" "I just wanted to feel seen again," she said. "Tyler, he noticed me." "You didn't want to feel seen," I replied. "You wanted an audience." She looked like she'd been slapped. And for the first time in years, I saw her without the practiced expression. No spin, no charm, just the empty space where something real should have been. I stood up. "Goodbye, Genevieve." "You're just going to walk away?" she asked, voice rising slightly. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "You already did." And then I left the cafe. But I didn't go far, because the real surprise was still waiting in the car. I closed the cafe door behind me and kept walking, not once looking back. She didn't chase me. I think some part of her believed I was bluffing, that I'd cool off, that I'd forgive her like I had when she forgot our anniversary 2 years in a row, or when she told her mother I lacked ambition while thinking I couldn't hear. But this time wasn't like those times. Something had snapped, and it wasn't temporary. It was final. The car was parked around the corner, engine still warm. As I slid into the driver's seat, I looked to my right. "You heard everything?" I asked. From the passenger seat, Hannah nodded. Genevieve's sister. She looked pale, anxious, like she'd just come back from a funeral. And in a way she had. A funeral for the version of her sister she used to believe in. "I didn't think it was real," she whispered. "I thought you were exaggerating. Until I saw it. The folder. The videos. The laughing." "Believe me now?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. When I first showed Hannah the flash drive a day earlier, she sat through the whole thing with her hand over her mouth. She kept whispering, "Oh my God," like a broken mantra. She wasn't just shocked by Genevieve's betrayal. She was furious about how easily it had been hidden. How their whole family had been told I was the cold, inattentive one. How Genevieve had painted herself as the victim in every subtle conversation, every family gathering, every snide remark that passed as a joke. "I want you to do it," she said now, turning to me. "The thing you planned. You're sure?" She nodded slowly. "She needs to see what being invisible really feels like." So we drove. Not home. Not to a hotel. But to the venue where Genevieve was scheduled to give a speech the next night for a local nonprofit she worked with. An event where she was being honored for community trust and family values. I had reserved a table under a fake name. Not to cause a scene. No, I had something better planned. Something quieter. More surgical. The kind of truth that doesn't need to scream to shatter someone's world. Genevieve wouldn't know I was in the room. But by the end of the night, she'd never forget it. The event hall was all polished wood floors, gold trim, and carefully arranged white tablecloths. Spotlights lit the stage where Genevieve's face smiled down from a banner, just beneath the words, "Honoring local voices in leadership." I sat near the back, dressed in a suit I hadn't worn since my cousin's wedding, feeling like a ghost sitting among the living. Hannah was at another table closer to the front, part of her job as family support for the honoree. I watched as Genevieve floated from guest to guest, her smile perfect, her posture rehearsed. You'd never guess she was unraveling behind the scenes, unless you looked closely. Her eyes darted, her hands fidgeted. She was waiting for the fallout. She knew something was coming. She just didn't know when or how. The crowd clapped as the host welcomed her to the stage. She adjusted the mic, tucked her hair behind her ear the way she always did when she was stalling for control, and began talking about community resilience, empathy, connection. Words she never used with me. Words that meant nothing when whispered in a house full of silence. And then, right as she hit her rhythm, the slideshow began behind her. It was supposed to be a montage of her volunteering, leading workshops, posing with smiling neighbors. But Hannah had replaced it, carefully, quietly, with something else. Nothing vulgar, nothing explicit, just pieces of the truth. A short clip of her in our kitchen, brushing crumbs from the counter as the man behind the camera chuckled. A photo of her on our bed in that familiar green dress. A blurry screenshot of the text where she said, "He doesn't suspect a thing. I'm good at pretending." The room shifted. You could feel it. Chairs creaked. Murmurs rose. Genevieve turned to see the screen and froze mid-sentence. Her face didn't just fall, it collapsed. She looked toward Hannah, who simply stared back without blinking. For a second, I thought Genevieve might faint. But instead, she grabbed the mic again, her voice trembling as she tried to recover. "That's not part of the official program," she said with a weak laugh. "Some kind of mix-up." No one laughed with her. No one clapped. And then, the host returned to the stage, whispering something in her ear as he gently took the mic away. Genevieve stepped down like someone walking through mud. Not running, not explaining, just walking. Her hands trembled as she passed by tables of colleagues, board members, friends she used to impress. No one stopped her. They just watched. I slipped out the side door before she could see me. I wasn't there to gloat. I didn't need her to know I'd done it. She could guess. But I still had one more move to make. And it wasn't about revenge. It was about freedom. I didn't go back to the motel that night. I didn't go anywhere familiar. I drove until the highway signs stopped mentioning towns I knew, and finally pulled into a quiet coastal village. The kind of place where no one asked where you came from or why your eyes looked like they hadn't closed in weeks. I found a small rental above a bookstore. The walls were thin, but the silence was real. It was the first time in years I could hear my own thoughts without flinching. The fallout came like a slow drip. I didn't read all of it. Just enough to know that Genevieve had been asked to step down from the nonprofit board. That her boss, Tyler, had apparently received an anonymous package at his office containing screenshots and timestamp logs. That mutual friends were quietly dropping off the radar. No dramatic confrontations. No court battles. Just silence. Just absence. And somehow that was louder than anything. I started over. Quietly. I took contract jobs with small landscaping crews, then eventually opened a tiny nursery on the edge of town. People came for succulents and stayed for coffee and conversation. I stopped apologizing for being soft-spoken. I stopped wondering whether being enough was a prerequisite for being loved. And one morning, as the sun spilled over the coast and my dog snored beneath the counter, I got a message from Hannah. Just one line. "She still checks the driveway every evening." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Genevieve had been right about one thing. I had faded during our marriage. But not because I stopped caring. I faded because she stopped seeing me. But the difference now, I see myself, fully, quietly, without shame. And I've learned that disappearing isn't always an escape. Sometimes it's how you finally arrive. Thank you for watching Reddit Confessions. If you've made it this far, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What moment in the story hit you the hardest? Was it the quiet walkout? The flash drive reveal? or the truth playing behind her at the event? Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more real stories that cut deep, heal slow, and always leave you thinking.